Hey you! Yes, you, watching this video. Do you want to own a piece of Scribbler? Only not a lock of hair or blood or flesh or anything else that will get you in trouble with the law? Well, now you can, with t-shirts, hoodies, tote bags and mugs featuring Obab Scribbler at her Teespring store. You know you want to. I shall now stop talking in third person and send you on to the video. Be lovely to each other and enjoy the show! The Friendship Express came to a complete stop, letting off a hiss of steam from its engine and wheels. Several ponies ran along the station platform and through the white steam, opening boxcar doors and allowing the passengers inside to finally exit the train after their long travels. One pony, dressed in a stylish grey and white jacket and wearing a pair of purple-tinted glasses, stepped off the train and gave an exaggerated swipe of his hoof against his brow.
My word, these steam trains are so old-fashioned,
Hoity Toity said to a line of ponies filing out behind him.
The smoke alone has turned my mane and coat into a garish wasteland of soot. I might as well be shoveling the coal for all the good sitting in the first-class seats did me. I must report to the Equestrian Railroad Association on the fabulous bullet trains that Napon has. Now they're speed and class.
Hoity Toity clasped his front hoofs together. Immediately, the half-dozen ponies behind him sprang into action and surrounded him, each carrying a cleaning implement such as filers, shampoo, hairspray, or lint rollers. In a whirlwind of movement too fast for the eye to see, the ponies clipped, shampooed, sprayed and tailored. Seconds later they were done and zipped back to their previous positions. Hoity Toity stood up, his entire form completely cleaned and groomed to perfection. His body gleamed in the midday sun.
Now then, this place better have some new designs to offer, or this will be a complete waste of valuable time.
He tilted his head toward the attendants.
Find me, beauty.
Receiving their orders, he and the others trotted away from the train station and towards the sparkling entrance of the Crystal Empire. Walking through the streets that comprised the outer town of the Crystal Empire, Hoity Toity could certainly see that the kingdom lived up to its name. The houses and streets, composed entirely of glittering quartz, amethyst, diamonds, and other precious stones, sparkled in the daylight sun, and yet their brilliance didn't strain the eyes. The crystal ponies going about their daily lives seemed to be made of translucent material, though thankfully none of their vital organs could be seen. Even the food appeared to be crystallized, yet as Hoity Toity bit through a dazzling corn on the cob, it was as smooth and chewy as one would expect it to be.
Truly a fantastic specimen,
he said as he finished off the corn and dumped the cob in a nearby trash bin.
And I dare say better than the sweet corn of Horsechester.
But as culturally stimulating as the environment surrounding him was, not a single pony had passed him by wearing an outfit. With all the large-scale and flashy buildings, one would think that a few frocks would be necessary to stand out in such a city. Hoity Toity intended to inquire about the local boutiques post-haste. His eyes scanned the street he was on, determined to pick out a pony that looked like they might know a thing or two about the local fashion circuit. He blinked as his gaze fell over an individual that definitely stood out from the rest, but not because of what he was wearing. Indeed, all that this particular stallion wore was a red baseball cap and a whistle hanging by a cord around his neck. That this pony's coat didn't gleam like the rest of the citizens further marked him out as a fellow out of place. Hoity Toity tracked his movements as the stallion headed toward a building with jerseys, footballs, and protective pads displayed on its windows. Gathering himself up, he rushed ahead and intercepted the stallion before he could enter the store.
My good sir, a moment of your time, if you please.
The stallion pulled back and regarded the newcomer with a confused stare.
Sure. What can I do for you?
You are Shining Armour, prince of this fine land, are you not?
Shining Armour smiled and stood tall.
Yeah, that's me.
And yet you are prancing around looking like that?
Hoity Toity shook his head and hissed.
Dreadful, my lad.
That wiped the smile off Shining Arm's face. He self-consciously looked down at himself, trying to see what Hoity Toity found so appalling.
I really don't know what you mean. I didn't step in anything, did I?
Hoity Toity flipped the hat resting on Shining Armour's head and flicked the whistle hanging from his neck.
These, Prince? What were you thinking?
Oh, these.
Shining Armour gave a good-natured chuckle.
I'm getting the ponies here ready for the equestrian games. They have a lot of spirit, but that won't be enough if they want to have a chance at winning.
Yes, all fine and good.
Hoity Toity waved his hoof airily in front of him.
But that doesn't excuse you walking around your subjects looking like a common track coach. You're a prince, for goodness sake!
Shining Armour narrowed his eyes and stared down the stallion opposite him.
Hey now, there's no need for that. Just who are you to judge how I go about my business?
He pointed at the fan on his rear as though it was the only form of identification that he needed.
Oh, my apologies. Hoity Toity, Equestria's leading fashion expert, at your service. And it would be against the cutie mark that adorns my flank to see you misrepresent yourself and your subjects that way.
My subjects? You mean the crystal ponies? I'm not sure I follow.
It's quite simple, my dear lad. You are a prince now. Anything you do, be it what you wear or how you conduct yourself, reflects upon the citizens of this land. And right now, you are screaming to the heavens that you don't care how you are seen. It doesn't put much confidence in me that you know how to run this country. Not at all.
Shining Armour swallowed a lump that had suddenly formed in his throat. He looked around him, at all the ponies now under his control, and rubbed at the back of his head with a hoof.
Well, I didn't mean to come across like that. I mean, I'm still new to this princey thing.
Which is fortunate for you that I deigned to come here in the first place.
He wrapped a leg around Shining Armour's broad shoulders and gave him a confident smirk.
But don't worry, I'll have you looking the part before you can say apple fritter.
But I have practice to get to.
Shining Armour stuttered. Any further objections were ignored as Hoity Toity dragged him away from the sporting goods store and toward the castle.
All in good time.
Hoity Toity said as he pulled a reluctant Shining Armour along.
Yes, all in good time. But first a little detour is in order, if I do say. No, that won't work. Too flashy.
A set of clothes with sparkling gems sailed through the air.
Not flashy enough.
A black tux followed the first.
Too many additions with this one.
A sports jacket with several sets of pockets joined the others.
By Celestia, who designed this?
Across the room, Shining Armour watched with growing unease as Hoity Toity tossed one outfit after another onto a growing pile of clothes on the floor. All of his best attire, ensembles that had been stitched by the finest seamsters in Canterlot, were being judged as unacceptable by Hoity Toity's critical eye. Finally, Hoity Toity threw up his hooves and stomped out of the closet.
That wardrobe should be condemned. Not a single piece of attire to match the grandeur that you deserve, Shining Armour.
Well, I've never been much for fashion,
Shining Armour said with a touch of embarrassment. Hoity Toity lowered his glasses to cast a harsh glare at the pile in the centre of the room.
That much I could already tell.
I guess then there's not much you can do.
With a sigh, Shining Armour began picking up his discarded clothes with his magic and began placing them back in the closet. He was only on his second article of clothing when Hoity Toity smacked the cloth away and stood with an air of having been offended.
Lad, you have no idea who you are dealing with. I swear, as Celestia's mine witness, that I will design a suit for you that will outshine the very crystals that make up this land. Nothing short of perfection will do to display yourself as the pinnacle of princehood in all of Equestria.
You really don't have to go through this much trouble.
Oh, but I do. I stake my very reputation on this. How could I look away when I see an icon of this kingdom going about with nary a concern for his looks? A handsome stallion like you should take some pride. There certainly aren't many of your kind around, I'm afraid.
What?
Shining Armour stammered.
What do you mean by that?
Easy there, lad. You're going to faint with all that blood rushing to your cheeks like that.
Shining Armour blushed harder and turned away.
But I meant what I said. Come, we'll away to the finest clothing store this town has to offer, and I'll personally see to it that you get fitted for an ensemble fit for a king, and certainly for a prince.
Hoity Toity grabbed Shining Armour's left foreleg and pulled him toward the door. The prince sighed and allowed himself to be dragged away. The two stallions soon found themselves within Madame Ruby's Aggregate Tailoring, a building with a giant spool of thread above its entrance. Inside, the store contained thousands of rolls of fabric of every colour imaginable, all laid out in rows of shelves. Needles of various sizes and the latest line of spindle sewing machines covered the tables. Hoity Toity wasted no time sorting through the available wares. It quickly became apparent that the fashion expert was in his element as he sorted out all the highest quality and most expensive material and arranged them in a workspace set aside for professional use. And in Hoity Toity's highly regarded opinion, he was a professional with a capital P.
Now then, before I can get started on your trend-setting attire, I'll need to take some measurements.
Measurements?
Shining Armour nervously eyed the tape measure that Hoity Toity picked up in his hooves.
Yes. Now hold still. I want to be sure I get everything right.
Why don't we ask one of the ladies here to do it?
Hoity Toity waved off Shining Armour's suggestion and held the tape measure taut between his hooves.
No, that won't do at all. This job needs my personal touch.
Not waiting for Shining Armour's reply, he descended on the hapless stallion.
Oh, yes, that's it. Oh, very impressive. Here too. My, for a unicorn, you have such broad withers.
Despite himself, Shining Armour perked up at that last remark and stood a little taller.
Well, even though I'm a prince now, I haven't slacked off in my training. I can't let all those years in the guard go to waste now, can I?
Indeed you can't.
Hoity Toity said in an appreciative manner.
I can't wait to see if you fill out the outfit I have planned. Marvelous.
It won't be too, saucy, will it?
That all depends on the eye of the beholder. Any mare, and I dare say even a few colts, will be turning their heads for a second look once I'm through with you.
Shining Armour gulped. He'd been doing that a lot today.
Almost there, and done.
Hoity Toity raised a hoof in triumph. Shining Armour chuckled and held up a hoof, but the other stallion had already turned away, leaving the prince's hoof unbumped.
Now be patient, this won't take long. Never doubt an earth pony when it comes to working with his hooves and teeth.
Oh, believe me.
Shining Armour took a seat on one of the plush cushions available within their working space.
We unicorns think we have an advantage with our horns, but I can still feel the bruises I got sparring with earth pony guards. They're tenacious where it counts.
Love to hear about it, but I must concentrate here.
Hoity Toity looked up from his work and tapped a hoof to his chin.
In fact, why don't you head back to your practice? By the time you're done, I should be finished here. Let's meet up at the Hard Quartz Cafe I saw earlier in, say, 2 hours. I will then present you with your new ensemble.
Shining Armour got up from his seat and stretched out his legs.
Sounds good. I need to make sure none of my team is slacking off.
He headed toward the exit, stopped, and turned back around.
And, Hoity Toity, thanks for this.
He left before the fashionista could form a reply. Three hours later, Hoity Toity sat at a table in the Hard Quartz Cafe, nursing a glass of wine and listening to the soft rock band playing on a nearby stage. On the table lay a box made of polished zirconium with a red ribbon tied around it. Every few minutes, Hoity Toity would look up, scan the crowd of ponies dining around him, and then turn back and take a sip of his drink. The music was pleasant and the wine adequate, but if he had to wait any longer, then so held the Crown Prince of the Crystal Empire.
Perhaps he got hung up. He is a very important dignitary, after all. I should know. Ponies to meet, schedules to keep, unexpected plumbing issues. So many possibilities.
He sighed and ran a hoof over the box.
Or perhaps I came across a little too strong. I do tend to get a little overboard when I get struck with inspiration.
Hoity Toity took off his glasses and laid them on the table. He rubbed his eyes with his hooves and sighed again.
I hope I wasn't uncomfortable to be around. A leader in fashion and a prince hardly mix well together, I suppose. Well, I still have a suit to deliver, so I'd better mosey off and deliver it at the castle.
He reached for his glass and downed the rest of his wine in one gulp. Just as he was about to put his glasses back on, he caught sight of movement out of the corner of his eye. The stallion that had been occupying Hoity Toity's thoughts for the past few hours ran up to his table, his body heaving for breath and his coat covered in a fine sheen of sweat.
Sorry for taking so long to get here.
Hoity Toity smiled at the new arrival, even as he cringed on the inside at being so close to some pony else's odorous perspiration.
No sweat, pun not intended. In fact, I was just about to order for the both of us. I was looking over the menu and picked out an entree that I am just dying to try. Care to join me?
Shining Armour gave a grateful nod and took a spot opposite Hoity Toity. He let out a heavy sigh. His rump melted into the seat cushion.
Yeah, really sorry for holding you up. You would not believe how much catching up I had to do to get here.
Oh, my apologies. I did not mean to pull you away from your duties. Fear not, I'll reschedule for another—
No!
Shining Armour interrupted. Both of his forelegs held out in a stopping motion. He blinked, looked at his hooves and quickly placed them back down.
I mean, no. This is good, really.
Very well. Then let's not waste any more time. Waitress!
Hoity Toity's mouth stretched into a grin. Within minutes, both ponies ordered and received their meals and dug into them with gusto. Steaming mashed potatoes covered in thick dollops of sour cream with sides of corn and beans comprised their dishes. The meals also came with a generous helping of mint ice cream served in a crystal cup. It was soon apparent, however, that while the presentation was good, the food itself was below expectations.
Huh. Kinda bland for such a showy place.
Shining Armour picked at his food with a fork, his appetite slowly losing its edge. Hoity Toity daintily wiped his mouth with a napkin before speaking.
Yes, that's generally how these places like to go. It's more for the atmosphere than the food. But that means we can get my gift for you that much quicker.
Hoity Toity lifted the box that had been set aside and held it out for Shining Armour.
For you. I hope it lives up to expectations.
Shining Armour took the offered box gently in his magic.
I can't see how it can't. I mean, the most famous fashion star in all of Equestria made it.
You flatter me.
Hoity Toity made a shooing motion with his hooves.
Now, go on. I'd like to see how strapping you look when it's on. A designer's job is never done until the pony himself wears it for the first time.
Oh, really? Then I'd better go and find a spot to put this on.
With that, Shining Armour got up and walked towards the restrooms, the box levitating in front of him. For Hoity Toity, the wait was excruciating. Many times he resisted the urge to gnaw on his hoof-cured hooves and contented himself with imagining how Shining Armour would look in his new duds once he walked out. Would he like it? Even though the prince seemed confident that he would, Hoity Toity found himself more anxious than he'd felt in a long time about what a pony would think of his latest creation. His ruminations came to a stop when the sound of feedback from a microphone filled the room. Ponies everywhere cringed and held their hooves to their ears in a futile attempt to block out the piercing wail.
Sorry.
Hoity Toity's head snapped up to the stage. There, standing a little awkwardly and adjusting the center microphone, was Shining Armour. The stallion looked uncomfortable with all the new attention on him, but nonetheless stayed put. Shining Armour finished fiddling with the microphone, stood tall and said,
This one goes out to that special sun pony that went above and beyond anything I could have expected. Thanks for making me feel special, and showing me a little bit on how this prince thing works. Thanks for the suit.
The band began to play, an upbeat rock tune with elements of West Coast influences mixed in. Soon after, Shining Armour began to sing. His voice carried a youthful baritone, not too deep and yet not too high, hitting the middle ground that drove the mares in the audience wild, and even the stallions to tap along. Before long, the entire room was jibing along with the beat and having a grand old time. It was all background noise to Hoity Toity. His eyes remained glued to Shining Armour, for while every pony else was enjoying the music, Hoity Toity was taking all pleasure from what the singing stallion wore. The outfit was coloured bright red, contrasting nicely with Shining Armour's white coat. Gold buttons held the vest together on the front, and ruffled white frills lined the collar and cuffs. Outlined in gold thread on either side of the vest was Shining Armour's cutie mark, standing out but not dominating the rest of the vest. Taken as a whole, each element blended together seamlessly, neither feature overpowering the other. And with the way Shining Armour moved while he sang, the vest fit him perfectly. He looked just like the prince he was. Hoity Toity felt his eyes growing moist. Up there, displaying his creation with happiness and contentment, Shining Armour shone with more luster than any crystal found within the kingdom. It was the most wonderful sight he had seen in a long time. The music from the band came to a crescendo, with Shining Armour hitting the last note perfectly. The audience stomped their hooves in appreciation, with even a few whistles filling the air. Shining Armour smiled, bowed, and stepped down from the stage. He headed over to where Hoity Toity sat and took his seat opposite him. A few moments passed with neither saying a word. Finally, Shining Armour cleared his throat and said,
Thanks for the suit.
At the remark, Hoity Toity came alive.
No, thank you! You don't know what it means for a creator like myself to see a pony wear his creation like that, in front of every pony. It's the best compliment I could ever receive.
You're welcome,
Shining Armour said, a little heat rising to his cheeks.
As long as you are pleased with it, then I'm satisfied.
Oh yes, I really am. I can't wait to see what every pony at the castle thinks of it.
Hoity Toity nodded, the smile on his face remaining firmly in place.
Then if we're done here, let's not waste time.
Shining Armour gave his own nod, stood up, and offered his hoof for Hoity Toity to take.
I totally agree. Let's go!
Night had fallen over the Crystal Empire. The lights of the city flickered on, causing the crystal buildings and streets to shine in a kaleidoscope of colourful beams. As he walked down the road leading to the palace, Hoity Toity took a moment to appreciate the beauty of the city laid out before him. Canterlot had a grand air and design around it, but the Crystal Empire promised truly astounding things for its citizens.
You have a beautiful city, lad,
he said to the companion walking beside him.
You must be proud of being able to lead such a fine land.
I am,
Shining Armour answered. He too looked around and beheld the kingdom he was responsible for.
I never imagined I would end up where I am. I hope I can live up to expectations.
I wouldn't fret about it. I'm sure you will.
Thanks, Hoity.
Toity!
Both stallions came to an abrupt halt as a young colt ran in front of them. The colt paused to catch his breath and looked up at Hoity Toity with desperate eyes.
You need to come back to Canterlot, quickly!
What is the matter?
There's emergency!
You act as though Cerberus himself was chasing you.
It's a disaster! The shipment for the fall line has been voted down by the board. They're demanding new designs by the end of the week.
Hoity Toity's hoof smacked against his forehead.
Oi, why no?
I guess this means we'll have to cancel our trip to the castle?
Yes, I'm afraid it does. Sorry for this, Shining Armour. If I don't deal with this now, it will lead to a severe dip in my business.
He sighed, took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. He felt a hoof on his shoulder and looked up to see an understanding expression being sent his way.
You don't have to explain. I know how it goes.
Shining Armour smiled and patted Hoity Toity on the back.
But I have several trips to Canterlot scheduled. We can always meet up again there.
Hoity Toity smiled and placed his glasses back on.
You're right. And they always say distance makes the heart grow fonder.
With a flick of his hoof, a card slipped out of Hoity Toity's sleeve. He hoofed it to Shining Armour.
That's my home address. Look me up and we'll make another date of it.
He held up his hoof, frog facing forward. Shining Armour blinked at the offer. A smile graced his features, and he eagerly pumped the hoof offered, a soft clop echoing in the night.
Ciao!
With that, Hoity Toity trotted off toward the train station, his assistant scrambling behind. Shining Armour watched him go, before looking down at the card and heaving a sigh. He placed it within his new vest and made his way to the castle. He had only taken a few steps when he stopped with a wide-eyed expression.
Date?